They found the farm exactly as Lugger had described. Her wolf's eye for terrain and detailed memory of places and paths would astound anyone who did not know the cast. The barn was a little bigger than Valentine would have liked, with only 22 guns. No time to be picky. Not with reapers on our trail, he thought. Any place with the trees cleared away and walls would have to do. Garnett entered with blade unsheathed, covered by his comrades' hunting bows and rifles. The parang, a shortened machete used by the wolves, gleamed in the mist-shrouded moonlight. A few bats fluttered out, disturbed from their pursuit of insects among the rafters. The scout appeared at the loft door and waved the rest in. Valentine led the others inside, fighting a disquieting feeling that something was wrong. Perhaps his Indian blood perceived something tickling below his conscious threshold. He had spent enough time on the borders of the Kurian zone to know that his sixth sense was worth paying attention to, though hard to qualify. The danger was too near somehow, but ill-defined. He finally dismissed it as the product of overwrought nerves. Valentine inspected the sturdy old barn. The water trough was full, which was good, and there were shaded lanterns and oil, which was better. Patel posted the men to the doors and windows. Cracks in the walls of the time-ravaged structure made handy loopholes. The exhausted families threw themselves down in a high-walled inner corner. Valentine trotted to the hayloft ladder and began to climb. The barn's upper level smelled like bat urine. From the loft, he watched his second scout, Gonzalez, backing into the barn, rifle pointed into the darkness. Garnett reported from his perch at the upper door.
Gonzo's got wind of him, sir. He always gets bug-eyed when they're around.
3 wolves from downstairs joined them in the loft and took positions on each side of the barn. Valentine glanced down through a gap in the loft floor to the lower level, where Patel talked quietly to Gonzalez in the dim light of a screened lantern. Both glanced up into the loft. Gonzalez nodded and climbed the ladder.
Sir, Sarge wanted me to show you this.
He extended a filthy and stinking piece of cloth drawn from his pocket. Valentine reached out to take the rag, when a chorus of shrieks sounded from down the hill in the direction of the old road. Valentine spun and ran to the wide loft door.
Ravies! Goddamn ravies!
The banshee wailing out of the midnight mists turned the back of Valentine's neck into a bristle brush. He bent to the gap in the floor.
They're here! Keep to your posts, look to your fronts. The ravies might be a ruse. They could be on top of the hill already.
He ran to the ladder and clambered down the rungs 2 at a time, driving a splinter into the flesh opposite his thumb in his haste. Valentine unsnapped the leather strap of his parang sheath and drew his revolver.
Uncle, the flares!
But Patel knew better than to wait for an order. The veteran sergeant already stood at the gaping southern door, lighting one. A wolf opened a lantern door so he could thrust it in. The high-pitched shrieking grew louder until it filled the night. The firework burst into flame, illuminating the barn with blue-white light and sharp black shadows. Patel wound up and threw the burning flare down the slope they had just traversed. Before it landed, he lit another and hurled it into the darkness as well. Other wolves copied him, tossing phosphorus candles in each direction. Valentine stared down the hill, transfixed by a mob emerging into the glare. Running figures with arms thrashing as if trying to swim through the air swept up toward the barn. Seemingly endless supplies of wind powered their screams. Their siren wail was paralyzing. They were human, or what amounted to human, considering their minds burned with madness, but with the wasted look of corpses and sparse streams of unkempt hair. Few wore more than tatters of clothing. Most ran naked, their skin pale in the light of burning phosphorus.
Don't let them in close enough to bite! Drop them, goddammit!
Ravies fell, one rising again with blood pouring from his neck to stagger a few paces and fall once more, this time for good. Another had a bullet tear through her shoulder, spinning her around like a puppet with tangled strings. She regained her balance and came on, screaming all the way. What looked like a scrawny 10-year-old boy stepped on one of the flaring candles without a glance. Valentine watched as the human wave approached, dribbling bodies as the wolf's bullets struck. He knew the ravies served as a distraction for something else lurking in the night. He felt the Reaper stalking his mind, approaching from the darkness, even if he could not see its body. The Reaper came, full of awful speed and power. A cloaked figure charged into the light, seeming to fly over the ground in a blur of motion.
On!
The wolf squeezed off a shot and worked the bolt on his rifle. The caped and cowled figure, still 20 feet from the barn, made a leap and crashed bodily through the old planks and beams as if they were paper mache. The Reaper landed on all fours, arms and legs splayed like a spider. Before a gun could be turned in its direction, it sprang at the nearest wolf, a shovel-bearded wedge of a man named Selby. It was upon him before he could bring up his gun. The hood's satchel-sized mouth opened to display pointed ebony teeth. Large, inhuman jaws sank into Selby's arm, thrown up in defense. The wolf's scream matched those from outside as the thing opened its mouth to bite again. Chaos reigned as the refugees began running. Wolves at the exits had to restrain them, taking up precious seconds when they should have been employing their guns. One wolf pumped shot after shot, working the lever-action rifle from his hip into the Reaper, pressing Selby to the detritus-covered floor. The Reaper fed, immune to the bullets hitting its heavy robes.
Selby!
Valentine grabbed a candle flare from Patel's two remaining at the south door. He thrust the candle into the lantern, waiting for it to sputter into life. It caught after an eternity, and he ran toward the hood. The thing raised its blood-smeared face from its twitching victim to receive the burning end in its eye. It slapped the candle out of Valentine's hand with the speed of a cougar's paw. As the thing rose, the Reaper's menacing black shadow filled the wall of the barn. Death reached for Valentine, who struggled to draw his blade from its sheath in time. A bullet caught the Reaper in the armpit, staggering it. A heavier, leather-clad missile hurled itself onto the hood's back. Patel's body blow brought it down, and using every ounce of his formidable strength, the sergeant managed to keep it on the floor until Valentine brought his machete onto the back of its neck. The blade bit deep into flesh and bone, but failed to sever the head. Oily, ink-black ichor poured from the wound. But still the thing rose, rolling Patel off with a heave. The sergeant fought on and bore down on one arm, ignoring the deadly teeth opening for him. Valentine lashed out again with his machete. The Reaper's head arced off to land next to Selby's lifeless body.
Jesus! They're in! They're in!
A few rabies, ghoulishly white in the glare of the candle, clambered through the gap in the wall created by the decapitated Reaper. Valentine shifted his parang to his left hand and reached for his pistol.
No.
The empty holster turned the movement into comic mime as he realized he had dropped the gun while getting the candle. But other wolves drew their pistols, snapping off shots at the shrieking forms. A ravy plunged in among the families. Valentine rushed to the corner to find the howling lunatic pinned against the wall by a man who'd had the presence of mind to grab an old pitchfork when the fight started. The ravy had both hands on the haft of the weapon, trying to wrench the tines out of her belly when Valentine came in, swinging his parang to strike and strike and strike again until she sank lifeless to the floor, at long last silent. The screaming outside had ceased. The wolves opened ammunition pouches and took bullets from belts and bandoliers. A final bullet or two ended the spasms of the few crawling, crippled targets still living and therefore still dangerous. The men in the loft called downstairs in anxiety over their comrades. Valentine ignored the chatter and saw with a kind of weary grief that one of the wives had been bitten by the impaled ravy. He went to check on Patel. The husky sergeant was on his feet, one arm hanging limp and useless, Valentine's pistol in his working hand. Patel handed the pistol back to the lieutenant. He held his hurt arm closer to his body and grimaced at the uncomprehending floorboards above.
Quiet up there! And keep your eyes peeled! Broken collarbone, I think. Could be my shoulders out as well. Are you okay, sir?
Hell, Patel. Enough is enough. Next it'll be, I hope you liked your drink. Now, let's get that arm in a sling for a start.
Valentine motioned an idle wolf over to help his sergeant. He saw another of his men bandaging the ravy bite on the woman as her anxious family crowded around.
We got a widower there who doesn't know it yet.
His sergeant nodded with sad understanding. and Valentine thought of Patel's family. They had been taken by the raving madness 5 years ago. The lieutenant walked through his shaken command, checking on his men, and came into the corner sheltering the escapees. He shot a significant glance at his wolf attending to the woman. The man caught the hint and nodded.
The bleeding stopped already, sir.
Valentine pointed at the lifeless Ravy.
Quick action, Mosley. Grab someone and get that out of here.
The candles outside were sputtering out. Valentine walked over to the ladder, intending to check with Gonzalez upstairs, when the floor suddenly tilted beneath his feet. From the ground, Valentine saw an albino white arm open a heavy trapdoor and an explosion of dirt, dried leaves, and twigs. The barn had a cellar. The Reaper got halfway out of the trapdoor as the bullets zipped over Valentine's head. His wolves, still keyed up from the fight, aimed their guns with lethal accuracy and pumped bullet after bullet into the yellow-eyed creature. Under the point-blank crossfire from 5 directions, the black-robed shape jerked wildly and fell back into the basement.
Grenades!
3 of his men gathered at the trapdoor, now shooting down with pistols. Striking matches or using the lanterns, 2 wolves lit fuses on the bombs and hurled them down the square hole. Valentine grabbed the trapdoor, flung it shut. The first explosion threw the door forever off its aged fastenings, and the second boomed as smoke mushroomed from the square hole. A Reaper sprang from the gap like something a magician had conjured up from the smoke. Arms nothing but 2 tarry stumps, and head a bony mask of horror. Even with its face blown off, the Reaper was on its feet and running, seeming to favor them with a splayed-toothed grin. The guns rang out again, but the creature fled through the exit, knocking Patel aside like a bowling pin in the path of a cannonball as the sergeant attempted another body blow. A tattered and smoldering cape streaming out behind it as it ran, the Reaper disappeared into the darkness. Some of the children had hands over their ears, sobbing with fear. Valentine tried to shake the drunken sensation that had come over him, but it was no use. The acrid air of the barn was too thick to breathe. He staggered to the door jamb. An hour later, with the barn cleared of bodies, except for the unfortunate Selby, who lay in his poncho in the empty blackness of the blasted cellar, Gonzalez again shared his discovery with Valentine. His scout, after asking for permission to speak privately in the loft, presented him with a filthy strip of cloth. Valentine examined the excrement-stained yellow rag with tired eyes.
Uncle smells something, sir, you know. He told me to check the area where we heard the bloodhounds real careful after everyone pulled out. I found these in the bushes where the Red River people relieved themselves, sir.
Valentine read the semi-literate scrawl by lantern light.
N+W. Barn. About 20 gun. Yours truly.
Betrayal. That explained a thing or two. But which one is yours truly? Valentine wondered. He remembered a couple of the farmhands had hurried to the bushes as they assembled for the flight to the barn. He hadn't thought anything of it at the time. The fear in the night had turned his own bowels to water as well. He gathered 3 wolves from downstairs and explained what he wanted to do when the sun came up. Mallow and his reserve platoon trotted up to the barn, just beating the sun. Valentine suppressed the urge to hug the panting lugger, who looked as tired as Valentine felt.
One in the basement, huh? You had some bad luck, rookie, but it could have been worse. Good thing the Currian pulling the strings wasn't good enough to work more than one at a time.
Mallow shook Valentine's hand, then offered the junior lieutenant a congratulatory swig of Busthead from a silver flask. Valentine tippled gratefully.
The Currian had a little help, sir. Someone was sending the Hoods love notes. They knew we'd make for that barn. They brought up the Ravies and had everything ready.
Oh, Christ. Some clodhopper thought he'd be up for a brass ring, huh?
Seems like.
What a welcome to free territory. One of their own dangling from a tree. No, I'll let them handle it back at the fort.
I lost a wolf, sir. They'll want quick justice.
Valentine had hoped that they would settle for a formal trial later, but the looks on his detail's face when they told him why he wanted the farmers searched made him doubtful. Mallow's face clouded over.
They'll obey orders, Valentine, or they'll see some quick justice. Tell them that if you must.
Yes, sir.
Mallow stepped inside the barn. The sky to the east was pinkening, ending the longest night of Valentine's young life. He nodded to his waiting wolves, and they roused the sleepy farmers and began checking pockets and packs. They had barely begun when the guilty party revealed himself. A 16-year-old boy, the one whose mother had been bitten the previous night, bolted for the gaping south doors.
Gotcha!
Two of Mallow's wolves interposed and restrained him. Valentine found a charcoal pencil wrapped in more rags of cloth, as well as a small compass.
A kid. What do you know?
The boy broke down, alternating threats and curses in between sobs. His ashen-faced father held his distraught wife. She already trembled with the weakness of the first stage of the disease that would claim her life within 2 or 3 more days, when she would have to be shot like a rabid dog. Mallow and Patel ignored the grieving parents and questioned the boy in time-honored good cop, bad cop fashion.
Who put you up to this, boy? What did they promise you? If it were up to this guy here, he'd snap your neck with his good arm. I can't help you unless you talk to me. Tell you what, you leave another note. Only write on it what we tell you, and you won't get hanged. Can't promise anything else, but you won't hang.
The boy's fear exploded into anger.
You don't get it, do you? They're in charge, not you. They make the laws. They run the show. And when they get tired of you, you'll be emptied, and the grogs will have the leftovers. Them that don't want to die gotta go along with orders.
Valentine, sick with fatigue, stepped outside to watch the dawn. As the yellow-orange sun burned through the morning haze, he wondered what doom of fate had selected him to be born into such a cruel, ugly time.